Welcome to Revive Ministries Podcast. Today we are beginning a new topic, and it is growing in our recovery. It's beginning of spring and recovery, and when I think of recovery, I know that it can be messy. A lot of us, we may not see the immediate result at times, and it's hard to tell how far our goals, how close we are to our goals, whether it's mental or physical recovery. But both matter because everything is connected. Today, we have a guest. I hope I don't mess up her name. Sharmin, is that correct?
Sharmin.
Sharmin.
I think it's the American accent that makes it like
I'm sorry.
It's fine.
Anyway, thank you, Sharmin, with coming and sharing your insight in this topic. I also want to share, I did mess this up. I thought I fixed it, but your book is releasing this month.
Yeah.
Which is February or March?
Yeah, February.
Okay, so I am right. Okay,
yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So she has a book coming out, and it's your experience with depression and growing up, and I thought it would be great to have you. I know we're talking about what kind of month will be best, but growing in recovery just allows a lot of avenues to go in, and I do like that. And I just want to say thank you for joining the discussion. I used to say this a while back that I'm like the modern day Mr. Rogers. I tried to talk about anything and everything, and it's supposed to be a safe place, but I appreciate you coming on. Disclaimer for those who are listening, watching around the world, that if you're in crisis, please seek appropriate professional help immediately. In the U.S., it's 1-800-273-8255. I do encourage you to find what is available around you. I'm going to start off with a quote. And Sharmin, right? Is that right? Okay, yeah. Sharmin. I know people say things a lot better, like me saying names, but this comes from Helen Keller. She says, although the world is full of suffering, it is also full of overcoming of it. What are your thoughts when you hear this quote? What comes to mind? What stands out with Helen Keller's quote?
I think it's important for people to know. I think people are not aware how much help there is because it's not spoken about as much. Mm-hmm. And in the world, we suffer in new ways. In 2020, we had no idea about the pandemic. Yeah. And when it came, we found new ways to help us with the coping mechanisms and to speak about it and everything. So it's the fact that there's so many different avenues to find help, but it's just people really need to have the courage to actually seek it.
Yeah, I was thinking of I was talking to someone. There's one quote from, I think, John Maxwell. He said, change is certain, but growth is optional, or something like that. The idea that change is always going to happen in our lives. And I know that 2020 with the whole COVID, it was a global change. How we connected, how we saw things. And sometimes we can tell ourselves what to buy or to maintain to make our lives better, but sometimes the bar is set so low. Sometimes we're stuck in the kind of the conformity, or the kind of, I would say the comfortable toxic blanket. We say we're like, it's we could convince ourselves to do anything or nothing. It's very easy with everything to watch on Netflix or whatever you're watching streaming. It's very easy to kind of procrastinate. But before we hear a little bit of your story, I want to ask you, what has helped you work through this uncertainty? We're talking about, there's not just one thing. It's different how this COVID-19 actually affected a lot of different people. Some people, thrived. Some people struggled more. Some people, one of my close friends who actually comes to the podcast a lot, he lost his father on Christmas Day. For him, it's a huge deal because he loves Christmas. He's like Elf, the movie, Elf standard of how he loves Christmas. And I knew that was really hard for him. But at the same time, what has worked for you going through all this? Because I think all of us were kind of trying to figure it out.
I think what helped me is allowing the change.
Uh-huh.
You know, like we can fight it as much as we can because it was so abnormal with, you know, working from home, self-isolating. You can't go out to restaurants and stuff, and it was hard at first because obviously I'm Muslim, and Ramadan, like eating alone, like just with your family, when normally it's such like you go to other people's houses, you go to restaurants. Eid as well, like doing it at home, it was hard to kind of like come to that. I'm sure with people with Christmas as well, like even though I don't celebrate, I love Christmas. Anyways, but it's like we can fight it as much as we can. We can get angry about it and complain, but it's, for me, it's just saying, you know what, it's the new norm now, and I have to accept it, and I have to kind of go with it, because if I keep fighting and getting angry about it and just always getting annoyed about, oh, I have to wear my mask, or, you know, I have to do this, I can't do that anymore, it was affecting me more than you know, than doing me any good. So it was just I think what you said before is like you choose if you want to change.
If you want, and some people, you know, you kind of answered the next question is what didn't work. is what you're talking, but also emphasizing what did work. It's funny, whenever I had like a stressful exam in college or whatever, or a class I knew was going to be really hard, like, you know, if I actually accepted that and knew it was going to be, and I had a more intentional approach, it seems less hard. But was it really less hard, or was it that I was prepared myself that it's gonna suck? So it's funny because our minds can do many amazing things. You just think about people who run marathons. You know, I'm always impressed. I'm like, how, why? Like for me, it's like I used to run long distance, but I'm sure it took those baby steps to say, you know, I'm going to run this much, and consistency is the thing. But was it all figured out at once? No, it was just. I remember Martin Luther King Day was we celebrated in January, and one of my favorite quotes from him is that you may not see the whole stair, but all you have to take is the first step. So sometimes we don't see the whole big picture, but sometimes I work in the mental health field, so one of the things I tell sometimes my clients is, I know you're going through a lot right now, but just try to be better today. That's it. Yeah, and I think that's very helpful. Now I want to, how about we just talk about your book a little bit? First, what prompted you, and then we'll kind of get, probably we'll kind of lead into your story, whatever you like to share, and what have you seen? What would you like to see happen? So, what prompted you? Let's just go there. What prompted you writing this book?
What it was is when I graduated from, obviously you guys call it college. When I graduated from university, I went straight into the field of working with addiction and everything, and I was so surprised with how many different routes that you can take when it comes to helping with your mental health, because like you said, everything's all connected. With addiction, it's connected to mental health. And then when I started kind of dabbling on going into therapy, like looking for therapy for myself, I first started off with counsel therapy, talking therapy. It didn't work. Then I worked with counseling, and then the counselor literally said to me, like, you give me too much anxiety. I don't think, you know, I can help you at this point. I was like, what is going on? But at that time, that's the only avenue that I thought. But then I heard about psychotherapy. And I literally thought, when I first heard that, I thought it was just someone putting a pendant over my eyes and I go into a trance. But it was a whole different aspect. It was like really starting from the bottom, which was like childhood trauma and how your childhood really determines the person that you are. But obviously I come from a different background. I'm South Asian, so I come from Bangladesh. So I saw a lot of confliction because therapy is very westernized. My values of being a colored woman was very much hitting each other quite a bit. Like my therapist would say to me, like, you know, you should stand up to your parents. I was like, not in my household. Not in my household. That would not happen in this household.
You're seen but not heard.
Basically. So like all those like I worked in recovery for 3 years. I was in therapy for a year and a half. So all the knowledge that I built on, I thought, I can write a book about this.
Yeah.
Like to help people who don't know where to start and introduce normal coping mechanisms that can help them in their day-to-day lives. And once they dabble into that and see, that's something I want to explore more, then you can. Then obviously I give more information of where you can get actual professional help, because when you say to someone like, you want to go into therapy, it does sound scary, because at first that defense mechanism comes in straight away, like, oh, I can do everything on my own actually. I don't need therapy. Therapy's not going to work for me. So like my book is more of like an introduction of like, look how great it can do for you, because it changed my whole life completely.
I do like what you were saying about your book is kind of trying to open the door to someone who may be resistant to even adventuring. And I love how you mentioned culture, because I'm actually half South Korean and half Puerto Rican, so I understand. I understand some of it. So for me, I find it I'm drawn to, like I used to say, my wife is Cuban, so I'm drawn to the first generation Americans. I'm first generation, like just because you have those awkward moments in school. My mom like has like some Korean dish or something, and like hearing how different they celebrate the holidays or anything like that. I didn't realize like how culture obviously is a huge misstep if you're a professional not to consider, especially when it comes to recovery, because it looks different. People have different values. Things are different and important. Family, I would say, at least personally, that I am just encouraged when there's a protective factor involved. If there's several protective factors, I don't want to mess with that at all. So for me, like, just because of what I've seen, I'm just really just trying to encourage, housing. A lot of times placement is always an issue along in the States. So for me, it's like solving and trying to help with, in the interim, some of the interpersonal conflicts can be really helpful instead of this be all or end all, this black and white, it's either this way or the highway. And I feel right now I do like the idea of reflecting. You don't want to stay in the past of where you were, but you want to learn from it. I'm a church leader, so I just remember if a church member said my best memories of church was 10 years ago, I'm like, something's wrong. Like something has to be, so it has to be something else. So I feel that I just want to also ask you, what would you like to share? I know you were kind of did this, but is there anything else you would like to share, about the book? We're gonna put all the things about the book in the notes for those who are watching and listening if they want to learn more. But anything specific, you mentioned if you're resistant, it's supposed to give you encourage you. Anything else that you think sticks out that you want to share with the listeners?
I talk a lot more about how much culture really affected me mentally, because I never obviously in the first chapter I really talk about my journey with mental health and how I really actually ended up discovering that therapy is the best route for me, because normally I just thought my life was normal, as everyone else thinks it is anyways, until you start branching out and you hear other people's stories and you start reflecting on the way you was brought up, or like the way your family dynamic is and stuff, and that's when you actually think that, wait a minute, like something's not right, if that makes sense. So I speak about that quite a lot. And obviously when I started psychotherapy, I was introduced to something called inner child, which I had no idea about, which I think a lot of people actually do have but are not aware of it, which is when in your childhood your parents unintentionally or intentionally are not giving what the child needs are, and when those needs are not met and you grow up, your needs are still as a child, so like for me, when I was in like certain relationships, I would expect my partner to love me unconditionally.
Yeah.
When really, it's a big requirement to ask, you know. Like, the only person that can love you unconditionally is your parents.
Yeah.
And your parents will love you no matter what. And I expected that from every single partner that I was in. And I had all these expectations that were so unrealistic. But then when I was looking back and obviously writing every expectation I had with my therapist, it was expectations a child would expect from a parent. And
I thought, that's, a lot of times even, I work just how we view our parents, it really shapes how we view the world. It just has to be honest. So like how your parents' relationship was, you kind of modeled that moving forward, even if you don't like it. That's even stranger. Even if you think it was bad relationship, or even though they get divorced or whatnot, it does affect the child a lot. There's this one word my wife has this. It says untranslatable words from different countries, and this I'm gonna butcher this word. It's Jugad. I don't know. It's Hindi, but it says ensuring that things happen even with the minimal resources. This is the name of the game for the mental health community sometimes. But for your own recovery, sometimes it rains and it pours. I remember this one song I've been actually, it's an old song. It wasn't. I think it's raindrops keep falling on my head. Yeah. But he's happy about it. But this is back in the 40s. I don't know. It's been a while ago, but it's so notable because a lot of times you're not allowed. No one talks about their feelings. But he tried to, reframe whatever he was going. I know it was a very simple, joyous song, but I think for me, when I look back at not so much of those monumental steps in either my journey or in my clients or my colleagues or whatever, it's those little steps. And sometimes it's more a reality that we don't have the resource. We don't have that extra. And I want to ask you, in recovery, it can be messy. What have you seen work in your experience when resources are nil? Not there. Maybe families are protected. What if they're not available? On your journey, in your own experience, what has kind of helped you? This is a lot of times they try to build coping skills or something like that. The wellness wellness recovery action plan, whatever it is, they try to build that just in case these rainy days. What has helped you in this journey?
I think what helped me is obviously when I worked as a recovery worker in rehabs, I've said this to a lot of my clients as well and to myself, is once you hit that road in recovery, there's no end stop. Like it's not like one day after like 20 years, you're like, my recovery ends. The minute you hit recovery, it's a lifelong thing. So your whole life from the day you realize that you need to start recovery needs to change. So what worked for me is once I started putting my mental health first, is everything from my past I changed. The people I was hanging around with, I was really selective on the people that continued to be in my life, even though as hard as it was, because these people I was friends with since I was 12 and I'm 26 now, and it was hard. It was a hard decision to make, but it's putting myself first. I had to do it because the people pleasing and putting other people's needs before mine was destroying me. So it was changing everything. Like I grew up in East London, but I moved to Northampton afterwards because I just needed a whole new clean slate. And now I have very good friends that I trust with all my heart. I'm very selective of family members because obviously in our culture it's like family before anything, and you have toxic family members in your life because you had to. But I had to make that choice of like, I have to put my needs first. And
I feel it's I talked about this a bit, especially the start of COVID, is boundaries. What does that look like? And for a culture, like I can imagine it's confusing because you're like, I have to be a good family member. I have to kind of do the roles, and it's not that you don't. I felt that I figured out, at least myself, that I could love people not really, but maybe they're not actively in my life now because I need I have a different direction.
Yeah.
Like I have friends that there'll always be people I wish the best for, but right now our priorities are different, and it's not that I have different interests, they have different interests. I always speak well. It's just that's what happens. Friendships are sometimes, it's just like sometimes you meet people, you have college, you have university friends that you don't, at the same time you look back at them. Maybe you don't have the same life or with them, but it's unrealistic that everyone's gonna follow you through through this whole journey, because you yourself keep changing. But I think when you're able to accept the fact that, even though I may not be talking to so much, or they're not part of my life, or maybe I have to put a boundary, I still hope for the best for them. Yeah, I really do. The people right now, these are the people that I want to be around, because they kind of support and reinforce the positive things that I want to keep moving towards, as opposed to maybe something, you got the people who love misery loves company. Those people, they're the ones that, you make like maybe bad decisions, but it feels good because you're with someone, but then you're like, you know what? I want something more. I want to be a little bit better. And it's a hard decision, but it's a good one to get to, because after that you start seeing your time as important, because if you don't feel your time is important and you're so accommodating, no one else will. And that's the truth of it. And
I'm glad
do
that
like
you
that
mentioned boundaries, because I think a lot of people don't understand how important boundaries are.
I know.
Because sometimes you end up feeling a bit soft-hearted and allowing sometimes people stepping over the boundaries, and that's a massive step back for yourself anyways, because these boundaries are for you and for the other person to know, like, this is my limit, and you need to respect that. And when you stick to your boundaries, you end up valuing yourself a lot more. And I think also, with a lot of people don't understand in recovery, is you have good and bad days. Like, I still have my good and bad days, but it's the only difference is now is I know what to do when I have the bad days. Rather than feeling like completely hopeless. Like, I know now what to do. I know what will help me. And this time embracing it, like, I can have a bad day. I'm only human. Like, not everything's going to be sunshines and roses. I will have those days where I'll find it hard to get out of bed because my depression's getting the best of me. But I can just sit there and be like, I can embrace it, because I can't be too hard on myself, which a lot of people end up doing when they hit that recovery mode of why am I feeling like this? I put so much work on myself and I'm still feeling really sad, and they get really upset because they felt like they were doing really well. But it's just saying, like, it's one of those days, but this time I know who to go to or how to help myself.
I was in the military, and there's always this kind of pseudo saying, embrace the suck. And the thing, the reason I even mentioned that is Ernest Hemingway. I used to love reading him in high school. Farewell to Arms. One of the scenes, I'm paraphrasing, the commander is like, how important is the person next to you in that foxhole or something? And he said, more than the war itself. So, like, sometimes it's the people around you that really do matter. And I also like the idea that boundaries are important, because, at least from my line of work, resources are sometimes thin. So for me, I never like giving, I would say, empty promises. For me, I shoot right from the hip. At least I hope clients feel that way. But the point I say this is that if I'm not being honest with my boundaries, I'm doing the same thing. I'm giving them like this unrealistic, I'm gonna be there for them when I'm not. And I've seen that do more damage. So I rather be straight. I can't provide. I remember one time I have to say, I can't provide this level of care. And and you obviously, it'll sound weird if you say that to your friend, but you would say something to the sense that I need this boundaries because I'm not going to do well if I, and you be respectful about it. If the person doesn't respect that and they continue, you may have to cut ties. But the thing is that at the end of it, I don't want to be bitter about that person. I just had to set my boundaries, and maybe not. Yeah, maybe this what I did will make that person kind of address his own boundaries, because clearly he needs something that I can't provide, or she, or whatever the case may be. But at the very least, I feel it does help you take care of you at the end of the day, and that's what this month is growing in our recovery. We can't grow if we have a lot of things around us sucking the water, and plant wise, or you kind of have to make room to kind of branch out, to kind of feel. And there's going to be times where you're going to struggle, but I do like this concept, whether it's mental, physical, spiritual. I feel all of it really does matter, in the sense that it provides that kind of individualized kind of approach to our recovery and care. I want to ask you, what final thoughts would you like to share, Sharmin, about I feel so scared to say your name because I feel like I'm gonna mess it up and everyone's gonna hate me. No, I was joking. But
don't worry, I had someone call me Charlotte at work for a whole year. I never corrected her because I just wasn't bothered at one point.
Well, yeah, I feel for people messing up names because I have a family from Korea and all that stuff, so I understand. So, anyway, final thoughts. What would you like to share with people listening? I'm gonna put all the notes of your book and everything, so if they want to know more, want to purchase or whatever, is there anything else that you want to share on this topic, or anything else that any projects you're looking forward to doing, or anything like that?
I think one thing I would like to share is that we in this generation now, we're so lucky that we're finally speaking up about it. And me, and I know a lot of people who are probably listening to this, we're like the first generation in, obviously, like in this country, and obviously for you in the US as well, and we can break that cycle where we can actually start talking about our mental health and putting ourselves first. And there's so many different avenues, like the holistic way, if you don't want to take medicine, or even like going to like the spiritual route, and it doesn't have to be faith-based, and like you said, everything's connected. If you go through that spiritual route, you end up looking for physical help and mental health as well. It's like everything's connected. It's just, don't be afraid anymore. There's no need to be afraid, because we're more open about it, and I'm glad that a lot more people are speaking about it now.
Yeah, I really, there's this one word, I was trying to find it. I'm just gonna say it. It's called vacilando. It's Spanish. I mean, it's basically in many different, Latin America. They're all gonna say I'm wrong, but really, it's just embracing the journey. I sometimes, one of the most, and I'll say this, during the whole COVID thing, last year, we're still in it, but last year I was with my wife and I was like, let's just go. We're just like, where are we going? We're just going in the car. I'm like, where are we going? I don't care. Like, throw the map away, just go. And we just drove a little bit. It is cathartic to drive, and just go on the road. Sometimes you're not in recovery, it's not gonna go well at times, but it's understanding that it is a journey. Like when we have these arbitrary destinations, when someone comes into my office and say, I need this in 5 months, I'm like, what's this 5 months? What is this arbitrary? So a lot of times we kind of make these limits, which really just actually do what the word says, limit our own progress, because literally there's two kind of coping. There's a practical. If I break my arm, I need to go to the doctor. I need to get it casted. But if it's emotional or something that I need to reflect and grow, and it's going to take time. If you're really being honest, those who are listening, if you've been struggling with these things for years, decades, it's not going to be solved in a month, most likely. It's going to be an ongoing journey, but it's focusing on not where you're going, like the destination, but focusing on being better today. I feel like in recovery, sometimes that's the best you could do. I think goal-oriented does help, because in the thick of it, I don't know if your experience, Sharmin, that sometimes you don't see the improvement. Like, what is going on? I'm like, I feel like I'm paused for like a while, but I feel on those moments, it's just making those little baby steps. Anything else you want to share before we close?
I agree with you massively. The baby steps is this works for me. Obviously, it's like I have like a end goal, but every day take each day as it comes, because I don't know, tomorrow I might even have a better day, or I might have a bad day, but I'm enjoying the moment I'm living now.
Yeah.
You know, and I think a lot of people end up getting so stressed about, oh my god, next week I need to do this, I need to do that. It's just you're wasting how many hours of your day worrying about something that you don't even know how it's going to turn out. You know, just life is beautiful. Life is so beautiful.
And I just want to say thank you again for joining the discussion, sharing a bit about your book and everything, and just I just love the idea that in like you said, nowadays we're able to talk about these things. Before, like, it was, it's nice that we're actually putting more value just because we're talking about it to ourselves in a weird way. So, like I said, to those listening, all the information about Sharmin's book and everything else will be in the notes of this episode. Remember to stay updated with all things Revive Ministries through the various platforms. ReviveMinistriesFL.com is our website. This is goodbye from Revive Ministries Podcast, beginning March, with growing in our recovery. This is a quote to leave us off. It says, just like there are always time for pain, there are always time for healing.